Maylene knew from the moment she could understand words that she was not wanted. In her small village, tucked away in the mountains where life was hard and unforgiving, girls were already considered less valuable than boys. But a girl who couldn't walk properly, she was seen as nothing more than a burden. Her foot had been twisted since birth. The village healer said it happened because her mother had fallen during pregnancy. Whatever the reason, it meant Maylene couldn't run through the fields like other children. Every step brought a sharp pain that shot up her leg. She walked with a limp, dragging her left foot behind her, and by the end of each day, her entire leg throbbed with exhaustion. Her father made sure she never forgot what she cost the family. He would sit in their dim, cramped home, drinking rice wine that they couldn't afford, and complain loudly about his misfortune. 3 daughters and not 1 son, he would mutter, his words slurring together. And the youngest can't even fetch water without taking twice as long as everyone else. Her mother wasn't much better. While she didn't drink, she had a tongue as sharp as any blade. "Useless girl," she would hiss when Maylene struggled to carry firewood or stumbled while sweeping the floor. "What did I do in my past life to deserve this? Your sisters at least married and brought bride prices. But you, who would want you?" Maylene tried her best. She really did. She would wake before dawn to start the cooking fire, ignoring the pain in her foot. She would spend hours mending clothes by candlelight, her fingers bleeding from needle pricks. She learned to prepare meals with whatever scraps they had, making thin soups stretch to feed the family. But nothing she did was ever enough. Her 2 older sisters had married and moved to their husbands' villages years ago. They occasionally sent small amounts of money, but it was never enough to satisfy their father's drinking or their mother's complaints. Maylene was left alone with parents who saw her as nothing but a reminder of their bad luck. As the years passed and Maylene turned 19, the whispers in the village grew louder. "She's too old now," the neighbors would say, not bothering to lower their voices when she limped past. "No man will take her as a wife. What will her parents do with her?" The answer came on a cold morning in early spring. Maylene was grinding grain when her father stumbled into the house, more animated than she had seen him in years. Behind him was a stranger, a merchant with fine clothes and calculating eyes. "This is her," her father said, gesturing at Maylene as if she were livestock being presented for sale. "She can cook, clean, and sew. A hard worker despite the foot." The merchant walked around Maylene slowly, examining her like one might inspect a horse at market. She felt her cheeks burn with shame, but she kept her eyes down, her heart pounding. "She's thin," the merchant said flatly. "And that foot is worse than you described." "She eats very little," her father said quickly. "That's actually an advantage. Won't cost much to feed. And she's young enough to have many working years ahead." They were negotiating her price. Her father was selling her. The realization hit Maylene like a bucket of cold water. She opened her mouth to speak, but her mother shot her a warning glare that clearly said, "Don't you dare ruin this." The merchant pulled out a small pouch of coins. The sound of them clinking together seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. Her father's eyes lit up with greed. After some back-and-forth bargaining that made Maylene feel sick to her stomach, they agreed on a sum. It was probably less than what a healthy pig would fetch at market. "Get your things," her mother told her shortly. "You leave today." Maylene's hands shook as she gathered her few belongings. She owned almost nothing. A spare set of worn clothes, a small comb that had belonged to her grandmother, and a thin blanket. She wrapped them in a cloth, her mind spinning. Where was she going? What would happen to her? She wanted to ask, but the words stuck in her throat. When she came back out, the merchant was waiting by the door. He held up a length of rope, and Maylene's blood ran cold. "Can't have you running off," he said matter-of-factly. "You're valuable property now." Her father didn't even look at her as the merchant tied the rope around her wrists. Her mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face showing no emotion at all. No goodbye, no blessing, not even a hint of concern about what might happen to her daughter. "She's your problem now," her father said, already counting the coins. The merchant led her outside where a wagon waited. Maylene's stomach dropped when she saw there were already 3 other girls sitting in the back, all tied together. They were young, probably between 15 and 20, and they all had the same look of fear and resignation in their eyes. The merchant pushed Maylene up into the wagon, tying her rope to the others. The girl next to her, who had tears streaming down her face, whispered, "Where are we going?" "The city," the merchant said, overhearing. "You'll all fetch good prices as servants. Be grateful. Could be worse. The way he said it suggested he knew exactly how much worse it could be. As the wagon lurched forward, Mei Lin turned back one last time to look at the only home she had ever known. Her mother had already gone inside. Her father stood in the doorway, the coin pouch in his hand, watching them leave with empty eyes. Then he too turned away and shut the door. The journey was horrible. They traveled for days, stopping only when absolutely necessary. The merchant fed them just enough to keep them alive, but not enough to give them strength. At night, he chained them to the wagon wheel so they couldn't escape. The other girls cried often. Mei Lin found she had no tears left. She felt numb, hollowed out. Her foot, which had always been a problem, became agony. The constant sitting in the cramped wagon made it swell, and when they had to walk, the pain was so intense she could barely breathe. The merchant would yank on the rope impatiently when she moved too slowly, causing her to stumble and fall. "Worthless cripple," he would mutter. "Should have paid less for you." It was the same thing her parents had always said. Mei Lin began to wonder if maybe they were all right. Maybe she really was worthless. Maybe this was all she deserved. The thought settled over her like a heavy blanket, suffocating and dark. By the time they reached the mountain pass that would lead them toward the city, Mei Lin had almost given up hope entirely. She stared at the towering peaks around them, so beautiful and indifferent to the suffering of the people passing through. She wondered briefly what it would be like to just disappear into those mountains, to be swallowed up by the wilderness. At least then she would be free. She had no idea that those mountains were about to give her exactly that chance. The attack came without warning, just as the sun was beginning to set behind the mountain peaks. One moment the wagon was creaking along the narrow mountain path, and the next men were rushing out from the trees, shouting and waving weapons, bandits. The merchant jumped from his seat and ran, abandoning his cargo without a second thought. The girls in the wagon screamed. Mei Lin's heart hammered in her chest as chaos exploded around them. The bandits were after the merchant's goods, the coins, anything valuable they could grab. In the confusion, with everyone shouting and running, Mei Lin saw her chance. Her hands were tied, but her feet weren't. She rolled over the side of the wagon, hitting the ground hard. Pain exploded through her bad foot, but she bit down on her lip to keep from crying out. She couldn't draw attention to herself. While the bandits ransacked the wagon and fought over the merchant's belongings, Mei Lin began crawling toward the tree line. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through her body, but fear pushed her forward. She dragged herself across rocks and dirt, her bound hands making it nearly impossible to move quickly. Behind her, she could still hear shouting, but she didn't dare look back. The forest was thick and dark. Branches scratched at her face and caught on her clothes. Mei Lin kept moving, pushing deeper into the wilderness, driven by pure survival instinct. She had no plan, no idea where she was going. All she knew was that she had to get away. She crawled for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Her hands were bleeding from the rope and from scraping against rocks. Her foot throbbed with such intense pain that she felt dizzy. Finally, when she could go no further, she collapsed near a small stream. The sound of rushing water filled her ears. Mei Lin tried to reach the stream to drink, but her body wouldn't obey anymore. She was so tired, so cold. The temperature was dropping as night fell in the mountains. She could see her breath in the air. Her thin clothes offered almost no protection against the cold. This is it, she thought dimly. This is where I die. Strangely, the thought didn't frighten her as much as she expected. At least she would die free, not as someone's property. At least the mountains would be her grave, not some unmarked hole in a city where no one knew her name. Her eyes drifted closed. She felt consciousness slipping away. The cold didn't seem so bad anymore. Everything was fading to black. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, steady footsteps crunching through the undergrowth. Mei Lin's eyes opened slightly, but she couldn't move. Couldn't run even if she wanted to. A figure appeared above her, silhouetted against the darkening sky. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and long hair tied back. He was dressed in simple mountain clothes, rough and practical. He carried a dead rabbit in one hand and several metal traps in the other. He stopped abruptly when he saw her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Mei Lin waited for whatever would happen next. Would he hurt her? Turn her in for a reward? At this point, she was too exhausted to care. But the man didn't do any of those things. He set down his traps carefully, then knelt beside her. His face was weathered and scarred, the face of someone who had lived a hard life. But his eyes, when they met hers, weren't cruel. They were cautious but not unkind. "You're hurt," he said. His voice was rough from lack of use, as if he didn't speak often. He noticed the rope around her wrists and his jaw tightened. Without asking permission, he pulled out a knife. Mei Lin flinched, but he was only cutting the rope. Her hands fell free and blood rushed back into them painfully. She gasped. "Can you walk?" he asked. Mei Lin tried to sit up but immediately collapsed back down. She shook her head weakly. The man looked at her for another moment, seeming to make a decision. Then he gathered his traps with one hand and with surprising gentleness lifted Mei Lin with the other arm. She was too weak to protest. Too cold and hurt to fight, she felt herself being carried through the forest, her head bouncing against the man's chest. He smelled like pine smoke and leather. She tried to stay conscious, to pay attention to where they were going, but everything was spinning. After what might have been minutes or hours, she saw warm light. A cabin, small and rough but solid, built from logs and stone. The man pushed the door open with his shoulder and carried her inside. The interior was sparse but clean. There was a fireplace with glowing embers, a wooden table, a few chairs, and a bed in the corner. Simple shelves held supplies and tools. Animal furs hung on one wall. It was the home of someone who lived alone and lived simply. The man laid her on the bed, then immediately went to stoke the fire. Flames leapt up, filling the room with warmth and light. Mei Lin watched him through half-closed eyes as he moved efficiently around the space. He filled a pot with water and set it over the fire. He found clean cloth and what looked like dried herbs. When he came back to the bed, Mei Lin tried to speak. "Who are you?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "Jiang Wei," he said simply. He didn't ask her name. He was looking at her foot, which was swollen and purple. He touched it gently, and Mei Lin couldn't help the small cry of pain that escaped her. "Hurt before today," he observed. It wasn't a question. He could see the twisted shape of it, the old injury made worse by recent abuse. Mei Lin nodded, tears pricking her eyes. Not from the pain, but from the gentleness in his touch. No one had ever touched her with such care before. Jiang Wei brought the now warm water over and began cleaning her wounds. He worked in silence, his movements careful and practiced. He cleaned the rope burns on her wrists, the cuts on her hands and face. He made a paste from the herbs and applied it to her foot, wrapping it in clean cloth. Through it all, Mei Lin watched him. He was older than her, maybe in his 40s, with lines around his eyes and gray streaking his dark hair. His hands were calloused and scarred but steady. He moved with the confidence of someone who had doctored wounds before. When he finished, he brought her a cup of water and helped her sit up enough to drink. The water was cold and clean, the best thing she had tasted in days. She drank it all. "Rest," Jiang Wei said, taking the empty cup. "We'll talk tomorrow." He moved to leave, but Mei Lin's hand shot out and grabbed his sleeve. He looked back at her, surprised. "Why?" she asked. "Why help me?" Jiang Wei was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because you needed help." It was the simplest answer, but somehow it meant everything. He gently removed her hand from his sleeve and went to the other side of the room. He took some furs from the wall and made a bed for himself on the floor near the fire. Mei Lin wanted to protest, to tell him she couldn't take his bed, but exhaustion pulled her under before she could form the words. As she drifted into sleep, truly safe for the first time in weeks, she heard the crackling of the fire and Jiang Wei's steady breathing. She was in a stranger's cabin in the middle of the mountains with no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight she was warm. She was safe, and that was more than she had dared to hope for. Mei Lin woke to the smell of cooking porridge and the sound of wood being chopped outside. For a confused moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The wagon, the bandits, collapsing in the forest, and the quiet man who had saved her. She sat up slowly, testing her body. Everything hurt, but it was a dull ache rather than the sharp agony of yesterday. Her foot was still wrapped in clean cloth, and someone had covered her with a thick fur blanket during the night. The cabin was empty except for her. Through the small window, she could see Jiang Wei outside, his axe rising and falling in a steady rhythm as he split logs. He worked with the easy efficiency of someone who had done this task thousands of times. Mei Lin pushed herself to stand, using the wall for support. She needed to use the outhouse, and she didn't want to call for help like a child. Every step was painful, but she gritted her teeth and made it to the door. Outside, the mountain air was crisp and cold, but the sun was shining. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Jiang Wei noticed her immediately and stopped chopping. He set down his axe and started toward her, but Mei Lin held up a hand. "I can manage," she said, her voice stronger than yesterday. He nodded and went back to his work, but she noticed he kept an eye on her as she made her slow way to the outhouse behind the cabin. When she came back, moving even slower now that her foot was bearing weight, he had gone inside. By the time she reached the cabin door, he was setting 2 bowls of porridge on the table. He gestured for her to sit, and she did, grateful to be off her foot. The porridge was simple but hot, seasoned with a little salt and some herbs she didn't recognize. It was the best meal she had eaten in longer than she could remember. They ate in silence. Mei Lin kept glancing at Jiang Wei, trying to figure him out. He didn't seem to expect conversation, didn't ask questions about who she was or where she had come from. He just ate his breakfast calmly, as if having a strange girl in his cabin was the most normal thing in the world. Finally, Mei Lin couldn't stand the silence anymore. "Thank you," she said, "for helping me, for the food and the bed. I don't have any way to repay you, but I will work. I can cook and clean and mend clothes. I won't be a burden." Jiang Wei looked at her for a long moment. "You need to heal first," he said simply. "Rest today. We'll talk about work later," and that was it. He stood, collected both bowls, and began washing them in a bucket of water. Then he went back outside to continue his work, leaving Mei Lin alone with her thoughts. The days that followed fell into a strange pattern. Jiang Wei would wake early, check on Mei Lin's wounds, leave food for her, and then spend the day working. He set traps, hunted, chopped wood, tended to a small garden plot, and did 100 other tasks that mountain living required. He spoke little, communicating mostly through gestures and simple instructions. Mei Lin watched and learned. She noticed how he dried herbs in bundles hanging from the ceiling, how he stored meat in a cold cellar dug into the ground, how he prepared animal hides by scraping and treating them. He was completely self-sufficient, needing nothing from the outside world. As her strength returned, Mei Lin began helping with small tasks. Jiang Wei would leave a pile of clothes that needed mending, and she would work on them throughout the day. Her stitching was neat and strong, much better than his rough attempts. When he came back in the evening, he would nod in approval but say nothing. She started cooking their meals. The first time she did, Jiang Wei paused in the doorway, surprised to find dinner already prepared. He had tasted her soup cautiously, and something in his expression had softened. After that, cooking became her responsibility, and she took pride in making good meals from his simple supplies. Weeks passed this way. Mei Lin's wounds healed, though her foot remained twisted and painful. Jiang Wei seemed to understand without being told. One evening he presented her with something he had made, a wooden brace that wrapped around her foot and ankle, redistributing her weight. He had carved it carefully from a single piece of wood, shaping it to fit her exactly. Mei Lin had stared at it, then at him, unable to speak. No one had ever made anything for her before. Her parents had certainly never bothered to help with her disability. They had just complained about it. "Try it," Jiang Wei said, looking almost embarrassed by her reaction. With the brace, walking became easier, not painless but manageable. She could move around the cabin and even walk short distances outside without wanting to cry. It changed everything. "Thank you," she whispered, and meant it with her whole heart. Jiang Wei just nodded and went back to sharpening his knife, but she saw the hint of a smile on his weathered face. As more time passed, they began to talk more. Not long conversations, but small exchanges that revealed pieces of their lives. Mei Lin learned that Jiang Wei had once lived in a town, that he had been married. She didn't press for details when she saw the sadness in his eyes. Some pain was too deep for words. In turn, she told him a little about her village, her family. Not everything. She was too ashamed to tell him how they had sold her, how worthless they had made her feel. But she told him about grinding grain and cooking and the mountain views she had loved as a child. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Jiang Wei asked, "Can you read?" Mei Lin shook her head, embarrassed. "My parents said there was no point teaching a girl, especially one like me. But I always wanted to learn." Jiang Wei was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and went to a shelf, pulling down a small collection of books. They were worn and old, clearly precious to him. "I can teach you," he said. "If you want." Maylin felt tears prick her eyes. "Really?" "Really." And so, in addition to her other work, Maylin began learning to read. It was difficult at first. The characters seemed to swim before her eyes, and she felt stupid when she couldn't remember them. But Jiang Wei was patient in a way she had never experienced. He never sighed with frustration or called her slow. He just repeated the lesson as many times as necessary. "You're smart," he told her one day when she successfully read a whole sentence. "Don't let anyone tell you different." It was such a simple statement, but it made something crack open in Mei Lin's chest. For the first time in her life, someone saw value in her, not despite her disability, but simply as a person capable of learning and growing. She began to understand Jiang Wei better too. He wasn't naturally silent or unfriendly. He had simply lived alone for so long that he had forgotten how to be around people, but slowly, she could see him coming back to life, like a plant that had been dormant beginning to bloom again. He laughed one day when she told a story about a particularly stubborn chicken from her village. It was a rusty sound, as if he hadn't laughed in years, but it was genuine. After that, she tried to make him laugh more often, and found she enjoyed the challenge. They worked together more as well. Jiang Wei began teaching her which plants in the forest were edible, which were medicinal, which were poisonous. He showed her how to set snares for rabbits, how to read the weather in the sky, how to find her way by the sun and stars. "Why are you teaching me all this?" Maylin asked one day. Jiang Wei paused in demonstrating how to start a fire without flint. "Because knowledge is survival in the mountains," he said. "And because everyone should know how to take care of themselves." It was more than that, though, and they both knew it. He was giving her tools, skills, independence. He was showing her that she could be capable, that she could survive on her own if she needed to. One night, about 2 months after she had arrived, Maylin couldn't sleep. She lay in the bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Jiang Wei's breathing from his sleeping spot by the fire. He always insisted she take the bed. She had offered to trade countless times, but he refused. "Jiang Wei," she whispered into the darkness. "Yes? Why did you really save me?" People don't just help strangers for no reason. There was a long silence. Maylin thought maybe he had fallen asleep. But then he spoke, his voice rough with old grief. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. "She would be about your age now if she had lived. When I saw you lying there by the stream, hurt and alone, I thought about her, about how I would have wanted someone to help her if she had needed it." Maylin felt tears slide down her cheeks. "What happened to her?" "Sickness took her. And my wife. 5 years ago now. I couldn't save them, though I tried everything." His voice was hollow with old pain. "After they died, I left the town. Couldn't stand the memories. Built this cabin and thought I would live out my days alone." "I'm sorry," Maylin whispered. "Me too." There was another pause. "But maybe some things happen for a reason. You needed help. I needed to remember that there's still good I can do in this world." They didn't speak again that night, but something had shifted between them. They weren't just a man who had saved a girl and a girl who was repaying him with work. They were two broken people who had found each other in the wilderness. And somehow together, they were becoming whole again. From that night on, the cabin felt less like a temporary shelter and more like something Maylin had never had before. A home. Spring came to the mountains like a slow awakening. The snow melted, revealing green shoots pushing through the earth. Birds returned, filling the air with song. And Jiang Wei started acting strangely. He would disappear for hours, going somewhere beyond his usual hunting grounds. When he returned, he was often covered in mud and carrying logs or stones. Maylin tried to ask what he was doing, but he just shook his head with a mysterious look in his eyes. "You'll see," was all he would say. Then one morning, about 4 months after Maylin had arrived, Jiang Wei asked her to come with him. He led her along a narrow path she hadn't noticed before, about 50 yards from the main cabin. They emerged into a small clearing, and Maylin stopped in her tracks, her breath catching. Foundation stones had been laid out in a rectangle. Logs were stacked nearby, already stripped of bark and cut to size. There were piles of clay, bundles of grass for thatching, and various tools. "What is this?" Maylin asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "A cabin," Jiang Wei said, looking almost shy. "For you. You need your own space, your own home." Maylin felt her eyes fill with tears. "Jiang Wei, I can't. This is too much." I don't deserve. Everyone deserves a home, he interrupted firmly. And you've been sleeping in my bed for months while I take the floor. This isn't charity. This is just… Right. He started explaining his plans for the structure, pointing out where the door would go, where the fireplace would be, how he would make the roof waterproof. But Maylin wasn't really hearing the details. She was overwhelmed by the gesture, by what it meant. He wasn't just giving her shelter. He was giving her dignity, independence, a place that would be truly hers. I want to help, she said suddenly. I want to help build it. Jiang Wei looked at her twisted foot, and she saw the doubt in his eyes. But she lifted her chin stubbornly. I'm not useless, she said. I can work. You've taught me so much already. Teach me this too. After a moment, Jiang Wei nodded. All right, but we do it right and we do it safe. You don't push yourself beyond what you can handle. Deal, Maylin agreed, already rolling up her sleeves. And so they began. Jiang Wei taught her how to mix clay with water and straw to make chinking for the walls. It was messy work, and by the end of the first day they were both covered in mud. Maylin looked at Jiang Wei's clay-splattered beard and started laughing. He looked at her and began laughing too, and for a moment they were just two people having fun, the weight of their pasts forgotten. Maylin's job became preparing the chinking and gathering stones from the stream to fill gaps in the foundation. Jiang Wei handled the heavy lifting, stacking logs and shaping them to fit together, but he made sure to show her every step, explaining why things were done certain ways. See how we notch the logs here? He said, demonstrating with his axe. This makes them lock together so the walls stay strong even in high winds. Maylin watched closely, memorizing every detail. She might not have the strength to swing an axe like he did, but she was learning the knowledge. And knowledge, as he had told her before, was survival. Some days were harder than others. Her foot would throb after hours of standing and walking back and forth. She learned to pace herself, to rest when needed without feeling guilty. Jiang Wei never pushed her, never complained when she had to stop. He just adjusted the work to match what she could do. She got better at finding creative ways to help. She couldn't lift heavy logs, but she could drag smaller branches using a rope slung over her shoulder. She couldn't climb to work on the roof, but she could organize supplies on the ground so everything Jiang Wei needed was within easy reach. She learned to work smart rather than just hard. As the walls rose, Maylin felt something rising in her too. Pride. She was building something real with her own hands. Every stone she placed, every batch of chinking she mixed was proof that she could create, that she could contribute something meaningful to the world. The evenings became special. After a long day of work, they would sit by the fire in the main cabin, eating dinner and talking about the day's progress. Jiang Wei would sketch plans in the dirt, showing Maylin what came next. She would offer suggestions, and sometimes he would actually use them. What if we make the window on the east side? She suggested one night. That way I can watch the sunrise. Jiang Wei considered it, then nodded. Good idea. Morning light is best for starting the day. It was such a small thing, but it made the cabin truly hers. He was building it, but she was helping to shape it into a home. The work brought them closer. They developed a rhythm, an unspoken understanding of how the other moved and worked. Jiang Wei would start to reach for a tool, and Maylin would hand it to him before he asked. She would struggle with a heavy bucket of clay, and he would be there to help without making her feel weak. One afternoon, as they were weaving pine boughs for temporary roofing, a traveling hunter passed by. He stopped, staring at them with open curiosity. You folks building a second cabin? He asked. Yes, Jiang Wei said simply, not stopping his work. That's your wife helping? The hunter gestured at Maylin. There was a brief, awkward pause. She's family, Jiang Wei said firmly, in a tone that discouraged further questions. After the hunter left, Maylin glanced at Jiang Wei. He was focused intently on his work, but she could see the tips of his ears were red. She felt warm herself, but not uncomfortable. Family. She liked the sound of that. As weeks turned into months, the cabin took shape. They built a stone fireplace together, Jiang Wei placing the large stones while Maylin filled the gaps with smaller ones and chinking. They made a door from planks, hanging it on hinges Jiang Wei forged himself. They created a window frame and covered it with oiled paper that let light through but kept the wind out. Maylin made a suggestion one day. Could we build a small loft? For storage? Jiang Wei looked up at the ceiling beams, calculating. Actually, yes. That would work well. Smart thinking. They added the loft and Mei Lin felt another surge of pride. This was her idea, her contribution to the design. The cabin wasn't just being built for her. She was actively creating it. The roof was the biggest challenge. Jiang Wei insisted on doing most of that work himself, worried about Mei Lin being up on a ladder with her foot. But she helped prepare the thatching, weaving grass and reeds into tight bundles that would shed water. Her fingers got cut and sore, but she didn't complain. This was her home they were building. Throughout all of this, they talked, really talked in a way they hadn't before. Jiang Wei told her about his life before the mountains, about being a clerk in a town office, about his wife who had loved growing flowers. I wasn't always good at building things, he admitted one day. Had to teach myself everything after I came here. Made a lot of mistakes at first. My first winter was rough because I didn't build the cabin properly. But you learned, Mei Lin said. I learned, he agreed. Same as you're learning now. We all start somewhere. Mei Lin opened up more too. She told him about always feeling like a burden, about her parents' constant disappointment, about her secret dreams of learning to read and maybe even write. Jiang Wei listened without judgment, his steady presence making it safe to share these painful memories. You know what I think? He said one evening. I think your parents were fools. They had a daughter who was intelligent, hardworking, and kind. But they were too busy looking at your foot to see the rest of you. Mei Lin felt tears prick her eyes. Do you really think I'm those things? I know you are. I see it every day. By the time summer arrived, the cabin was nearly finished. They had built it strong and solid, able to withstand mountain storms. It was small but beautifully made, each detail thought out and crafted with care. The day they completed it, Jiang Wei built a fire in the new fireplace for the first time. Smoke rose from the chimney and they both stood back to watch it, grinning like children. It's really done, Mei Lin whispered, almost unable to believe it. It's really done, Jiang Wei confirmed. Want to see inside? The interior was bare but full of potential. The walls were smooth and well chinked, keeping out drafts. The fireplace drew properly, filling the space with warmth. The window let in beautiful morning light just as Mei Lin had wanted. The loft overhead offered storage space. We'll need to make you a bed, Jiang Wei said, his mind already working on the next project. And shelves. A table and chair. Storage boxes. Jiang Wei, Mei Lin interrupted. He looked at her. Thank you. For all of this. For seeing me as someone worth building a home for. Jiang Wei's expression softened. Mei Lin, you've brought life back to this mountain. You've reminded me what it means to have someone to care about, someone to work alongside. If anything, I should be thanking you. They stood together in the doorway of her new cabin, looking out at the clearing where they had worked side by side for months. The main cabin was visible through the trees, smoke rising from its chimney too. 2 homes but 1 family. We did good work, Jiang Wei said finally. We did, Mei Lin agreed. And she wasn't just talking about the cabin. They had built something bigger than walls and roof. They had built trust, partnership, and something that felt like belonging. As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Mei Lin sat on the step of her new home and felt something she had never experienced before. She felt proud of herself. 6 months had passed since Mei Lin arrived in the mountains. She had settled into her new cabin, filling it with simple furniture Jiang Wei helped her make. Life had found a peaceful rhythm. She would wake each morning in her own home, tend to her daily tasks, learn from Jiang Wei, and spend evenings reading by her fireplace or sharing meals with him in the main cabin. She had almost stopped looking over her shoulder, almost stopped fearing that someone would come looking for her. Almost. The trader arrived on a gray afternoon in late autumn. Mei Lin was outside gathering herbs near the tree line when she heard an unfamiliar voice calling out. Her blood went cold. She crouched behind a bush, her heart pounding, and watched as a stranger approached Jiang Wei's cabin. He was a rough-looking man in traveling clothes, leading a tired mule loaded with goods. "Hello there," he called out. "Any chance a weary traveler could rest here for the night? There's a storm coming and the next village is too far to reach before dark." Jiang Wei, who had been chopping wood, set down his axe. Mei Lin could see the hesitation in his stance. He didn't like strangers, didn't like his solitude disturbed. But the mountains had an unwritten rule. You didn't turn away travelers in bad weather. People died in mountain storms. "You can sleep in the shed," Jiang Wei said gruffly. "I'll bring you food. The trader smiled, showing several missing teeth. Much appreciated, friend. The name's Chen. Mei Lin stayed hidden, watching as Jiang Wei showed the trader to a small storage shed where firewood was kept. He cleared some space and brought out an old blanket. The trader settled in, apparently grateful for even this basic shelter. As the afternoon wore on, Mei Lin carefully made her way back to her cabin, staying out of sight. She watched from her window as Jiang Wei brought food to the trader. She should have felt safe. Jiang Wei wouldn't tell anyone about her, but something about the trader made her uneasy. As evening fell and the promised storm began rolling in, Mei Lin saw the trader leave the shed and approach Jiang Wei's cabin. Against her better judgment, she grabbed her walking stick and made her way closer, staying in the shadows. She had to know what they were talking about. Quite a setup you have here, the trader was saying as Mei Lin crept close enough to hear through the window. Living all alone must be peaceful, though I imagine it gets lonely. I prefer it, Jiang Wei said shortly. Fair enough, fair enough. There was a pause. Say, I don't suppose you've seen a young woman pass through these parts. Crippled foot, early 20s, probably scared looking? Mei Lin's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the cabin wall, hardly daring to breathe. Why would you be looking for someone like that? Jiang Wei's voice was carefully neutral. There's a reward out for her, the trader said, and Mei Lin could hear the greed in his voice. Some merchant lost valuable property earlier this year. Girl who was sold legally to him, then escaped during a bandit attack. He's offering good money for information leading to her recovery. Property? Jiang Wei's voice had gone flat. You mean a person? Well, legally speaking, she was purchased fair and square. Ran off before the merchant could get value from his investment. Bad for business, you understand? If I could find her, collect that reward. The trader trailed off meaningfully. Mei Lin's hands were shaking. She wanted to run, but her feet seemed rooted to the ground. This was it. This was the moment her fragile new life came crashing down. I haven't seen anyone matching that description, Jiang Wei said. You sure about that? The trader's voice took on a sharper edge. Because I've been asking in the villages below, and word is there's someone living up here with you. A young woman. Now that's mighty interesting, don't you think? There was a long, heavy silence. Mei Lin could imagine Jiang Wei's face carefully blank, revealing nothing. Finally, he spoke. What's interesting is a man tracking down someone who escaped being sold like livestock. What kind of life was she running from that she'd risk mountain bandits to get away? That's not really our concern, is it? The trader said. Law says she was purchased. That makes her property, whether we like it or not. I wonder, Jiang Wei said slowly, if you actually know the law as well as you think you do. What's that supposed to mean? Mei Lin heard footsteps, then Jiang Wei's voice again, but changed. Harder, more authoritative. It was a voice she had never heard him use before. It means that selling people without proper documentation is illegal. It means that trafficking, especially of young women, carries serious penalties. It means that any merchant buying girls from desperate families without going through proper channels is breaking the law himself. I don't know what you... I was a magistrate's clerk for 15 years. Jiang Wei interrupted, his voice cutting like a blade. I know exactly what the law says. I also know that merchants who deal in human trade tend to avoid official channels because they know what they're doing is criminal. This merchant of yours, does he have documentation? Official papers? Or did he just show up with a bag of coins? The trader was silent. Mei Lin's heart was racing. Jiang Wei had never mentioned being a clerk, let alone one working for a magistrate. I thought so, Jiang Wei continued. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sleep in that shed tonight because the storm is dangerous. Tomorrow morning you're going to leave. And you're going to forget you were ever here? Or what? The trader tried to sound tough, but Mei Lin could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Or I'll make sure word reaches the provincial capital about a trader helping to track down trafficking victims. I still have contacts in the government offices. People who would be very interested in investigating this merchant and anyone helping him. You're bluffing. Am I? Want to find out? Jiang Wei's voice was cold as ice. Because I'll tell you something, friend. I left government service, but I didn't lose my connections. One letter from me, and this merchant you're working for will have inspectors crawling over every transaction he's ever made. There was shuffling, the sound of someone standing abruptly. I don't want any trouble, the trader said, his bravado completely gone. Then don't make any. Sleep. Leave at dawn and forget this place exists. Fine. Fine. I'm going. Mei Lin heard footsteps retreating, then the door closing. She stayed frozen against the wall, her mind reeling. After a few minutes, she heard Jiang Wei's voice, soft now. You can come in now, Mei Lin, I know you're there. On shaking legs, she made her way to the door. Jiang Wei opened it before she could knock, his face grim. He pulled her inside quickly and closed the door. You heard? He asked. Mei Lin nodded, unable to speak. Then suddenly she was crying, all the fear and relief pouring out at once. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I brought trouble to you. I should leave before— You're not going anywhere, Jiang Wei said firmly. He guided her to a chair by the fire. You're safe here. That man won't bother us again. But what you said about being a clerk, about having connections, was true, Jiang Wei said, pouring her tea with steady hands. I worked in the magistrate's office for years. I know the law better than that fool trader does. And I do still have contacts, though I haven't used them in a long time. Mei Lin took the tea, her hands still shaking. Why didn't you tell me before? Jiang Wei sat down across from her. Because I left that life behind. After my family died, I wanted nothing to do with the world of officials and laws and politics. I just wanted peace, he paused. But I'm glad I remembered it tonight. That knowledge protected you. He could come back with others, Mei Lin said, fear creeping into her voice again. He won't. Men like that are cowards. They only push when they think they have power. The moment someone pushes back with real authority, they fold. Jiang Wei leaned forward. And Mei Lin, listen to me. What that merchant did, buying you from your family, that was illegal. You're not escaped property. You're a person who got away from criminals. My family sold me, Mei Lin whispered. They took money from me. That doesn't make it legal. That doesn't make it right. Jiang Wei's voice was gentle but firm. You were trafficked. The law is supposed to protect people like you, even if it doesn't always work the way it should. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the storm had arrived, wind howling and rain hammering against the roof. But inside, Mei Lin felt safe despite the scare. Jiang Wei, she said finally, thank you. For protecting me. For risking yourself, he shook his head. Your family, Mei Lin. That's what family does. We protect each other. Family. There was that word again. But this time it didn't make her feel awkward. It made her feel grounded, real, like she belonged somewhere. What if more people come looking? She asked. Then we'll deal with them too. Jiang Wei stood and checked that the door was securely barred. But I don't think they will. Word will spread that there's a former government clerk in these mountains who knows the law. People who operate in the shadows don't like that kind of attention. Mei Lin stayed in Jiang Wei's cabin that night. Neither of them wanted to be alone after the confrontation. She slept on a fur by the fire while Jiang Wei kept watch, though the trader never emerged from the shed. True to Jiang Wei's prediction, the trader was gone before dawn. They found the shed empty, not even a thank you left behind. The man had vanished like a bad dream, but the encounter had changed something. The trader's visit, frightening as it had been, sparked a change in Jiang Wei. The next morning, as they sat eating breakfast, he looked at Mei Lin with a thoughtful expression. You need to learn more, he said abruptly. Mei Lin looked up from her porridge. More reading? I'm getting better at— No, well, yes, continue with that. But I mean survival skills. Real mountain knowledge. He set down his bowl. What if something happened to me? What if you needed to live alone for a while or had to leave quickly? You need to be able to take care of yourself completely. The thought of something happening to Jiang Wei made Mei Lin's chest tight, but she understood his point. She had relied on him for too much, for too long. It was time to become truly independent. Teach me everything, she said firmly. And so a new kind of education began. Jiang Wei had always taught her things here and there, but now he became systematic about it. Every day brought new lessons, new skills, new confidence. He started with plants. They spent days walking the forest, Jiang Wei pointing out different species and explaining their uses. This is wild garlic, he said, digging up a plant with long green leaves. Good for cooking, but also fights sickness. If you have a cough or feel fever coming on, boil this in water and drink it. Mei Lin carefully sketched the plant in a journal Jiang Wei had given her, noting where it grew and when to harvest it. Her reading and writing skills came in handy now, letting her create her own reference guide. And this? Jiang Wei indicated a plant with pretty purple flowers. Wolfsbane, Mei Lin said confidently. Don't touch it, poisonous. Even brushing against it can make your skin burn. Good. Jiang Wei nodded approvingly. Knowing what not to touch is as important as knowing what to use. They found mushrooms growing on a rotting log. Shromi Madaher studied them carefully. These are safe. See the white gills underneath? But if you see a mushroom that looks almost the same but has yellow gills, don't eat it. Will make you very sick, maybe kill you. How do you remember it all? Mei Lin asked, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. Practice, time, mistakes, though I tried to keep those small. He smiled slightly. You'll learn. Your mind is sharp. You just need experience. They worked on setting snares next. Jiang Wei showed her how to find animal trails by looking for droppings and tracks. Rabbits are creatures of habit, he explained. They use the same paths every day. Set your snare here, where the trail narrows between these rocks. Mei Lin's twisted foot made it harder to crouch and work close to the ground, but she adapted. She learned to kneel or sit while working, using her hands and upper body strength. The wooden brace Jiang Wei had made helped significantly. The first time she caught a rabbit on her own, she felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pride at succeeding, but also sadness for the small life. Jiang Wei understood. It's right to feel something, he said. Taking a life, even in animals, shouldn't be easy. But we need to eat, and this is how we survive. Just make sure nothing is wasted. Use the meat, the fur, everything. Honor the animal by using what it gives you. He taught her how to clean and prepare the rabbit, how to stretch and dry the fur. It was messy, unpleasant work, but Mei Lin pushed through. This was part of mountain life. If she wanted true independence, she couldn't afford to be squeamish. Weather reading came next. They would sit outside in the evenings, and Jiang Wei would point at the sky. See how the clouds are moving fast and getting darker? Storm coming, probably tomorrow. And feel how the air is heavy? That means rain, not snow. What if the air is dry and the stars are very bright? Mei Lin asked. Clear, cold night ahead. Good for seeing, but dangerous if you're caught outside without proper clothing. Mei Lin started watching the sky constantly, testing her predictions against what actually happened. She got better at reading the signs, learning the language of weather that mountain people had known for generations. Jiang Wei also made sure she could navigate. If you're lost, the moss grows thickest on the north side of trees, he said. And if you can see the sun at midday, it's always in the southern part of the sky. At night, find the North Star. He showed her how to locate it using other stars as guides. They practiced this over and over, Jiang Wei taking her to different parts of the forest and having her find her way back. The first few times, Mei Lin panicked when she wasn't sure which direction to go. But gradually, she learned to stay calm, to look for signs, to trust her knowledge. What if it's cloudy and I can't see the stars? She asked. Then you make camp and wait for morning. Don't wander in the dark in unfamiliar territory. That's how people get hurt. One skill Mei Lin took to naturally was working with herbs and medicine. Jiang Wei taught her which plants helped with pain, which reduced fever, which stopped bleeding. She had a gentle touch and a good memory for details, and she found the work deeply satisfying. You have a gift for this, Jiang Wei observed one day as he watched her carefully grind dried herbs into powder. Better than me, actually. My hands are too rough. Mei Lin looked up surprised. Really? Really? You should develop this skill. Medicine is always valuable in the mountains. So Mei Lin dedicated herself to learning everything she could about healing. She dried herbs carefully, storing them in clay jars she made herself. She practiced mixing salves and preparing tinctures. Jiang Wei brought her books he had collected over the years, and she studied them by candlelight, slowly working through the complex characters. The real test came unexpectedly. They heard voices calling one afternoon, urgent and frightened. A man and woman from one of the lower villages appeared, carrying a small boy of about 7. The child was burning with fever, his eyes glassy and unfocused. Please, the mother begged. We heard there's a healer up here. Our son is so sick. The village healer tried everything, but nothing works. Mei Lin's mind raced. She had never treated anyone except herself before. What if she made a mistake? What if the child died because of her? Jiang Wei put a hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. You know what to do, he said quietly. Trust yourself. Mei Lin took a deep breath and nodded. She examined the boy carefully, noting his symptoms. High fever, cough, difficulty breathing. She had read about illnesses like this, and she knew which herbs might help. Working quickly but carefully, she prepared a remedy. She boiled water and added specific herbs. Willow bark for fever, elderflower to help with the cough, and a few others to boost his strength. While it cooled enough to drink, she made a paste from different herbs and applied it to his chest to help him breathe easier. Make him drink this every few hours, she instructed the parents. Keep him cool with damp cloths. The fever should break by tomorrow morning, if it doesn't come back immediately. The parents thanked her profusely, trying to pay with what little they had. Maylin refused the money but accepted some dried fish and vegetables. Just bring him back to visit when he's well, she said. I'd like to see him healthy. After they left, Maylin collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking. What if I was wrong? What if the medicine doesn't work? It will work, Zhang Wei said confidently. You diagnosed correctly and chose the right treatment. I saw what you did. It was good medicine. 2 days later, the parents returned with the boy, who was running around energetically, completely recovered. The mother hugged Maylin, tears streaming down her face. You saved him, she said. Thank you. Thank you so much. After they left, Maylin sat outside her cabin watching the sunset, feeling something profound shift inside her. She had saved a life. With her own knowledge, her own skills, she had made a real difference. Her twisted foot didn't matter. Her difficult past didn't matter. What mattered was what she could do, who she was now. Word spread slowly through the mountain communities about the healer in the high country. People would occasionally make the difficult journey to seek Maylin's help. She never turned anyone away, and she never asked for payment beyond simple trade goods or food. Zhang Wei watched her grow into this role with obvious pride. You found your purpose, he said one evening. Thanks to you, Maylin replied. You gave me the chance to discover what I could be. No, Zhang Wei shook his head. I just gave you the opportunity. You did the work. You became this person through your own effort and intelligence. One day, as they were preparing for winter, Zhang Wei surprised her. He presented her with a beautifully carved walking stick, much better than the simple one she had been using. I noticed your old one was getting worn, he said, almost embarrassed by her delighted reaction. This one is stronger. And see here? He pointed to marks carved into the wood. I measured it so you can use it to estimate distance. And these notches. They help you keep count of things if you need to. It's beautiful, Maylin said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. You put so much thought into it. You walk a lot now, going to gather herbs and visit patients. You need a good stick. Maylin used her new walking stick every day, and each time she did, she remembered that she had someone who cared about her comfort, who thought about making her life easier. It was a gift that went far beyond its practical use. By the time winter arrived, Maylin was confident in her abilities. She could identify hundreds of plants. She could set effective snares and prepare game. She could read the weather and navigate by the stars. She could treat common illnesses, and 2 full years had passed since Maylin had collapsed by the stream, and Zhang Wei had saved her. She was 21 now, confident and skilled, no longer the frightened girl who had been sold like property. Her reputation as a healer had spread through the mountain villages, and she had helped countless people. Life was good, peaceful. She should have known it couldn't last. It was a bright spring morning when Maylin heard someone calling her name. Not just her name, but the way her family used to say it, with a particular accent from her home village. Her blood went cold. She looked up from the herb she was drying to see a young woman approaching, thin and ragged, with a face she recognized instantly. Her younger sister, Jing. Maylin stood slowly, her heart pounding. Jing looked terrible. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her face gaunt with hunger, her eyes red from crying. She was only 17 now, but she looked older, worn down by hardship. Maylin. Jing stopped a few feet away, staring. Is it really you? You look so different. Maylin was very aware of how much she had changed. She stood straighter now, her body strong from mountain work. Her clothes were simple but clean and well made. Her hair was neatly braided. She looked healthy, capable, nothing like the beaten-down girl who had left the village. Jing, Maylin said, her voice carefully neutral. What are you doing here? I had to find you, Jing said, and then she was crying, words tumbling out in a rush. Everything fell apart after you left. Father drank himself to death 2 years ago. Mother got sick last winter and died. The debt collectors came for everything. They took the house, the land, everything. I have nothing. No one will help me. I remembered the merchants talking about heading toward these mountains, and I thought, maybe you were still alive and I could find you. Mei Lin listened, feeling a strange numbness. Her parents were dead. She waited for grief to hit, but it didn't come. Instead, she just felt empty. These people had sold her. They had called her worthless. And now they were gone. How did you find me exactly? Mei Lin asked. I asked in the villages. They said there was a healer in the mountains, a young woman with a twisted foot. I knew it had to be you. Jing wiped her eyes. Mei Lin, I'm so sorry. For what they did to you. For not standing up for you. I was young and scared, but that's no excuse. I should have done something. Zhang Wei appeared from around the cabin carrying firewood. He stopped when he saw Jing, his eyes immediately assessing the situation. Mei Lin caught his gaze and gave a small shake of her head. Not a threat, just complicated. This is my sister Jing, Mei Lin said. Jing, this is Zhang Wei. He saved my life. Jing bowed respectfully to Zhang Wei, who nodded in acknowledgement but said nothing. He set down his wood and waited, giving Mei Lin space to handle this but staying close in case she needed support. What do you want, Jing? Mei Lin asked, though she already knew the answer. I need help, Jing admitted, her voice breaking. I have nothing. No money, no food, nowhere to go. The other villagers turned their backs on me because of the family debts. I thought maybe you could give me some money or let me stay here or something, anything. I'm desperate. There it was. After 2 years after everything, her family was asking her for help. The bitter irony wasn't lost on Mei Lin. When she had needed them, they had sold her. Now that they needed her, here they came with hands outstretched. Come inside, Mei Lin said finally. You look like you haven't eaten in days. Jing followed her into the cabin, looking around with wide eyes at the well-organized space, the dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, the books on the shelves, the comfortable furniture. You live here? It's so nice. I built it, Mei Lin said, putting a pot of soup on to warm. Well, Zhang Wei and I built it together. I have my own home now. But your foot, Jing said, confused. How did you… I mean, Father always said you couldn't… Father was wrong about a lot of things, Mei Lin said sharply. Then she softened her tone. Sit. Eat. She gave Jing a bowl of soup and some bread, watching as her sister ate like she was starving, which she probably was. Despite everything, Mei Lin felt a flicker of pity. Jing had been just a child when Mei Lin was sold. And she was family, even if that family had been broken and toxic. Zhang Wei came in and sat quietly in the corner, a steady presence. Mei Lin was grateful he was there. After Jing had eaten, Mei Lin said, Tell me everything. Start from when I left. The story that came out was grim. After selling Mei Lin, their father had drunk away the money within months. Their mother had become bitter and mean, taking out her frustrations on Jing. When their father died from his drinking, the debt collectors discovered he had borrowed money from multiple people, using the house as collateral. With him gone, they wanted payment. Their mother had tried to sell Jing too, just like she had sold Mei Lin. But Jing had run away before the transaction could happen. She had lived on the streets for a while, then with various families who used her as free labor. When their mother died, Jing had hoped to at least get the house, but it was already gone, claimed by creditors. I have nothing, Jing finished, tears streaming down her face again. No skills, no education, no prospects. I'm going to end up sold anyway, or worse. Unless you help me. Mei Lin sat back, her mind racing. This was her sister. Blood family. Part of her wanted to take Jing in, to give her a home here in the mountains. But another part, the part that had grown strong and independent over 2 years, hesitated. Let me talk to Zhang Wei, Mei Lin said. Stay here. Rest. She stepped outside with Zhang Wei, walking far enough that Jing couldn't hear them. They stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the mountains. What do you think? Mei Lin asked finally. It's not my decision, Zhang Wei said. This is your home, your life, but I'll support whatever you choose. She's my sister, Mei Lin said, but she's also part of the family that destroyed me. She was a child then, Zhang Wei pointed out gently. Couldn't have stopped what happened even if she wanted to. I know. Mei Lin rubbed her face tiredly. Part of me wants to help her, but another part is so angry. They took everything from me. My childhood, my dignity, my sense of worth. They sold me like I was nothing. And now that I've built something good, here comes family asking for help. You don't owe them anything, Zhang Wei said firmly. Not after what they did. But is that who I want to be? Mei Lin asked. Someone who turns away family in need even if that family hurt me? They stood in silence again. Finally, Zhang Wei said, "You're not the same person you were 2 years ago. You've become strong, independent, skilled. You have value that no one can take away. The question is, will helping your sister take that away from you? Or can you help her in a way that maintains what you've built?" Mei Lin thought about that for a long time. Then she nodded, decision made. "I know what to do." She went back inside where Jing was waiting anxiously. Mei Lin sat down across from her and looked her sister in the eye. "I'm not going to give you money," she said. Jing's face fell. "And you can't stay here permanently. But I'm going to help you, just not the way you're expecting." "What do you mean?" Jing asked warily. "I'm going to give you what Zhang Wei gave me, a chance to become independent." Mei Lin stood and started gathering items from her shelves. "These are medicinal herbs. I'll teach you which ones are valuable and how to recognize them. You can gather them and sell them in the villages. It's honest work that will earn you money." She continued packing supplies. "I'm giving you a week's worth of food and basic traveling supplies. I'm going to teach you how to set simple snares so you can catch rabbits to eat or sell. I'll show you which plants are safe to eat in the wild." "But Mei Lin, I'm not finished," Mei Lin said firmly. "You can stay in Zhang Wei's shed for 1 week while I teach you these skills. After that, you need to leave and make your own way. But you'll leave with knowledge, supplies, and the ability to take care of yourself." "Why won't you just let me stay?" Jing asked, and there was hurt in her voice. Mei Lin sat back down, her expression soft but resolute. "Because I learned something important these past 2 years. I learned that true value comes from being able to stand on your own feet. When I got here, I was broken. I thought I was worthless because that's what our family taught me to believe. But Zhang Wei didn't just give me a home. He gave me skills, confidence, and independence. He taught me I was capable." She reached out and took Jing's hand. "I want that for you too. I don't want you dependent on anyone, not even me. I want you to discover that you're stronger than you think you are. But that only happens if you're pushed to be independent." "What if I fail?" Jing whispered. "You won't, not if you try. And even if you struggle at first, that's okay. Struggling teaches you." Mei Lin squeezed her sister's hand. "I'm giving you tools and knowledge. What you do with them is up to you." Jing looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Mei Lin. "You're so different now. So strong I barely recognize you." "Good," Mei Lin said, "because the person you knew was dying inside. This is who I really am when I'm not being told I'm worthless." For the next week, Mei Lin taught Jing everything she could. They walked the forest together, Mei Lin pointing out valuable herbs and showing Jing how to harvest them without damaging the plants. She taught her how to dry and store them properly, how to bundle them for sale. 3 years. It had been 3 full years since the day Mei Lin had stumbled into Zhang Wei's life, and his into hers. She was 22 now, and the mountains had become more than just her refuge. They had become her kingdom. Autumn was painting the forest in brilliant reds and golds. Mei Lin stood outside her cabin, watching smoke rise from both chimneys, hers and Zhang Wei's. The sight filled her with contentment. 2 homes but 1 family. It was an arrangement that worked perfectly for them. Her cabin was filled with the tools of her trade now. Shelves lined the walls, organized with jars of dried herbs, salves, tinctures, and remedies. She had even added a small extension, a workshop where she could prepare medicines properly. Zhang Wei had helped her build it last spring, the 2 of them working side by side just like they had when building the original cabin. Mei Lin's reputation had grown far beyond the nearby villages. People would travel for days to seek her help, bringing their sick children, their elderly parents, their various ailments. She never turned anyone away, though she was careful not to promise what she couldn't deliver. Some things were beyond healing, and she had learned to be honest about that. The mountain communities had embraced her fully. She wasn't just the healer anymore. She was Mei Lin, a valued member of their scattered society. When there were celebrations in the villages, she was invited. When there were problems, people sought her counsel. Her twisted foot was just a part of who she was, unremarkable and unimportant. Zhang Wei had changed too. He was less isolated now, more comfortable around people. He would accompany Mei Lin to village gatherings occasionally, and while he never became chatty, he was no longer the complete recluse he had been. She had drawn him back into the world gently and gradually. They had developed something special, the 2 of them. Not a romantic relationship, though some villagers assumed that's what it was. It was deeper than that, more fundamental. They were partners in the truest sense. They relied on each other, supported each other, challenged each other to be better. On this particular autumn evening, they sat together outside Zhang Wei's cabin, sharing a meal as they often did. The air was cool and crisp, perfect for the hot stew Mei Lin had prepared. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone. "I've been thinking," Zhang Wei said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Mei Lin looked at him curiously. "About what?" "About making this official." "Making what official?" Zhang Wei set down his bowl and looked at her seriously. "Our partnership. Our family arrangement. Right now, if something happened to me, legally you'd have no claim to this land, these cabins. And if something happened to you, I'd have no right to make decisions about your care." Mei Lin frowned, not quite understanding where he was going with this. "I'm not talking about marriage," Zhang Wei clarified quickly. It's not like that between us. But there are legal ways to designate you as family. I could adopt you formally, though that seems strange given you're an adult. Or we could register as a household partnership, which is what some mountain families do. "Why are you thinking about this now?" Mei Lin asked. Zhang Wei looked uncomfortable. "I'm 48 years old. That's not ancient, but it's not young either. Mountain life is hard. Things happen. I want to make sure you're protected, that this place is yours as much as it is mine." Mei Lin felt warmth spread through her chest. "You want to make sure I inherit this land?" "I want to make sure you're secure," Zhang Wei corrected. "You've built a life here. Your healing practice, your cabin, your place in the community. It shouldn't all be dependent on me being alive. It should be yours, legally and clearly." "What do you want, though?" Mei Lin asked. "Not what you think is best for me. What do you actually want?" Zhang Wei was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the darkening forest. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I want what we already have. I want to keep living here, working alongside you, being your family. I don't need it to look any particular way. I just want it to be secure and recognized." "Then let's do it," Mei Lin said decisively. "The household partnership thing. Let's make it official that we're a family unit and that we both own this land together." "You're sure?" "Completely sure." Mei Lin smiled. "You saved my life, Zhang Wei. You gave me a home and taught me to value myself. Of course I want that recognized. You're the best family I've ever had." Zhang Wei's eyes glistened suspiciously, but he blinked and looked away. "Good, that's good. I'll go to the district office next month and arrange it." They sat in comfortable silence again, but it felt different now, more solid. They had named what they were to each other, and it felt right. As the weeks passed and autumn deepened into early winter, Mei Lin found herself reflecting on her journey. Sometimes, when she was alone in her cabin, she would think about the girl she had been, scared, hurt, convinced of her own worthlessness. That girl felt like a stranger now. She remembered the merchant's wagon, the rope around her wrists, the absolute certainty that her life was over. If someone had told her then that she would end up here, confident and skilled and valued, she never would have believed it. But here she was. One morning, a family arrived from one of the distant villages. They brought their teenage daughter, who reminded Mei Lin painfully of herself at that age. The girl walked with a severe limp, her leg twisted from a childhood accident. But worse than the physical disability was the look in her eyes. Shame, defeat, the certainty that she was a burden. Mei Lin treated the girl's immediate ailment, a bad infection in her leg. But as she worked, she talked to the girl gently. "What's your name?" "Hua," the girl mumbled, not meeting her eyes. "That's a pretty name. Flower. Do you like flowers?" Hana shrugged. "I guess. Not that it matters. I'm not good for much." Mei Lin's hands stilled. She looked at the girl, seeing herself 3 years ago. "Why do you say that?" "Because it's true. My leg makes me slow. I can't do heavy work. My family has to take care of me. I'm just in the way." Mei Lin sat back and looked at the girl seriously. "Why, look at me." The girl reluctantly raised her eyes. "See my foot?" Mei Lin extended her twisted foot, showing the girl. "I was born like this. My family told me I was worthless because of it, useless, a burden." Hua's eyes widened. "But you're the healer. Everyone respects you. Now they do. But 3 years ago I was exactly where you are. I believed I had no value. I believed my disability defined everything I could be." Mei Lin leaned forward. I was wrong. And so are you. But I can't. Can you think? Mei Lin interrupted. Can you learn? Can you use your hands? Your mind? Yes, but then you're capable of far more than you realize. Your leg doesn't determine your worth. It's just one small part of who you are. Mei Lin finished bandaging the girl's infection. You know what I do? I heal people. I use my knowledge and my hands to help others. My foot doesn't matter for that. I found something I'm good at, something that matters. Hua looked at Mei Lin's organized shelves, the evidence of her successful practice, and something shifted in her expression. A tiny spark of hope. Could you teach me? About herbs? She asked hesitantly. Mei Lin smiled. I'd be happy to. Come back when your leg heals. Stay for a week. I'll teach you some basics. After that, it's up to you what you do with the knowledge. The girl's parents looked surprised but grateful. After they left, Zhang Wei, who had been listening from the doorway, said, You're going to change that girl's life. I hope so, Mei Lin said. The way you changed mine. You changed your own life, Zhang Wei corrected. I just gave you the opportunity, same as you're doing for her. As winter settled in fully, Mei Lin and Zhang Wei prepared for the cold months ahead. They had developed an efficient system over the years. They would take turns cooking meals and share them, alternating between cabins. They would sit together in the evenings, reading or working on projects, comfortable in each other's presence. Zhang Wei had become quite the craftsman, making furniture and tools not just for them but for trade with the villages. Mei Lin continued her healing practice, though winter meant fewer visitors. She used the quiet time to study her medical books, to experiment with new herbal combinations, to prepare for the busy spring ahead. One evening, as snow fell softly outside and they sat by Zhang Wei's fire, Mei Lin said, Do you ever regret it? Taking me in? Zhang Wei looked up from the knife he was sharpening, surprised. Never, not once. Why would you ask that? Because your life was peaceful before I arrived. Quiet. And I brought complications. Traders looking for me, extra mouths to feed, more work. You brought life, Zhang Wei said firmly. Before you came, I was just existing. Going through the motions. Waiting to die, really, though I didn't admit it. You reminded me what it means to be alive. To have purpose. To care about someone. He set down his knife and looked at her directly. You saved my life as much as I saved yours, Mei Lin. Maybe more. I was drowning in grief and loneliness, and you pulled me out. Mei Lin felt tears prick her eyes. We saved each other then. We did, Zhang Wei agreed. That's what family does. The winter passed peacefully. Spring came again, bringing new growth and new visitors seeking healing. True to her word, Mei Lin taught young Hua about herbs during a week-long visit. The girl proved to be a quick learner, and Mei Lin saw confidence growing in her with each passing day.